Hi, everyone. Welcome. I would like to call the Ann Arbor Housing Board of Appeals meeting to order. Sorry, I'm looking. We have such a long packet today. So, Deborah, could you do a roll call for us, please? And I believe everyone needs to state, since we're doing this remotely, where you are calling in from.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you. We'll start with Kristin Schweighofer.
Present, attending remotely from Pittsfield Township, Michigan.
Lisa Stelter.
Present, attending remotely from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Angela Rasmussen.
Present, attending remotely from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Jerry Schulte.
Present, attending remotely from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Tim Durham.
Present, attending remotely from Ann Arbor.
Very good. For staff, I've got Brandy Lewis.
Present, attending remotely from Adrian, Michigan.
Alicia Turner Tolbert.
Present, attending remotely from Augusta Township.
Brandon Boggs.
Present, attending remotely from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Glenn Dempsey.
Present, attending remotely from Mason, Michigan.
Michael Redmond.
Present, attending remotely, City of Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Michael Lemieux.
Present and remotely from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
And John Reiser.
Present from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Roll call is complete and we do have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Up next, we have an approval of agenda. I think there are two minor modifications. Let's see. One is that we will be moving the Kellogg property to the July meeting. And I believe the other piece is that the Sunnyside address on the agenda is incorrect. It should be 907 Sunnyside, not 1002. However, in the rest of the packet detail, it is correct. So beyond those two items, are there any other notes for the agenda? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve it given those two changes.
Alicia had a correction for the HBA G1 item, that it should be HBA instead of BBA.
Right. Got it. Thank you. Any other items? Okay, not seeing any hands or hearing anyone. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Please approve the agenda as amended. Sorry.
Thanks, Angie. Is there a second?
Second.
I second it. Okay.
Oh, I think Tim might have beat Lisa out on that one.
Fine.
So
that's fine.
we'll give it to Tim.
Sorry, Lisa.
There'll be more opportunities later, I'm sure. All right, thank you so much. All in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Same sign? All right, our amended agenda is approved. Moving on to public commentary. Each individual who would like to address the board has 3 minutes to do so. However, if you are here for an appeal, you'll also have an opportunity under that specific appeal. Is there someone that would like to address the board? Deborah, can you let us know?
We have George and Caitlin. Caitlin, you have your hand up. Please feel free to speak.
Hi, my name is Caitlin. My husband John and I are moving to the Van Dusen house in 3 weeks. And we just wanted to voice our support in favor of the variance. We've lived in Ann Arbor for 4 years now, and we're really excited to be moving into this property that's so well maintained relative to the other places that we've lived here so far. So we were able to tour the property ourselves in person, and we visited the basement. We didn't notice anything out of the ordinary with the stairs, so nothing raised a flag for us. And John has been really forthcoming with us about this whole process and wanted to make sure that we were kept in the loop about everything. So we just wanted to express our approval of the process and support for the variance request.
Thanks, Caitlin. Deborah, is there anyone else that would like to address the board?
I see no other ones in the waiting room.
Okay. All right. Up next is the approval of the minutes. On our agenda, we have the Housing Board of Appeals meeting minutes from April 13th. Are there any changes to the minutes? Everyone can take just a minute to peek at them. They were sent out to all of us ahead of time. All right, would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion. Okay, I'm sorry. Lisa Stelter, I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thanks, Lisa. Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All right, Lisa first, Tim second, to approve the minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, minutes are approved. We have amended the agenda, so at this point, the old business was moved to our July agenda, so we will move on to new business. Up first is the variance appeal for, and I don't have the address in front of me now because the agenda was amended. Let's see, that is for nope, that's the wrong one. Sorry, I'm scrolling through my 44-page packet here.
1002 Sunnyside.
Thank you. Well, I think
It's 907.
It's
Oh,
907.
907.
Yeah, the agenda was incorrect, but the
Correct,
packet,
you're right. 907.
right, because the property owner is 10002 Sunnyside. Okay, so the request is for an appeal for fire exits at 907 Sunnyside. Can we have the staff report, please?
Yes. So the house was built in 1942, seems to be original construction. During some research, some older permits were found. And staff recommends that the variance not be granted, as the stairway does not meet the standards adopted at the time of construction nor the current building code standards, and does not comply with the minimum requirements of section 8504 of the housing code. There's a building permit from 1966 that describes the work as rebuild back entrance to basement stairway. The code requirements for stairways in the 1960s would require a 9-inch minimum tread depth. I included on the attachments the permit from 1965.
Thank you. And I looked in the packet, and I guess I had a question on the schematics. It looked like on the lower level, is that a door to the exterior out of the storage study? Just given the front of the house, I would have been surprised to see that. Sorry, it's on page 23 of my packet, if that's helpful. I know it's hard to scroll. Perhaps the owner could answer that when we turn it over to him. So thank you for the staff report. Is there anything else to note from staff? Can the board ask questions now?
Yeah.
Great. Could you provide the conversations you've had with the owner in terms of what types of modifications the city would be looking for in this instance?
I mean, the city would need the steps to meet minimum building code standards. I haven't had conversations with the owner myself. Brandon, have you spoken with the owner?
I haven't had any conversations in some time now.
Is there sufficient landing space at the bottom to make that modification? That's a question for city staff.
Brandon, can you recall from your site visit?
From what I can recall, I do believe there would be room to extend that down some more.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess I was looking at, maybe it was page 24 of my packet, or scrolling further down, because you can see the lower level where the staircase ends in that storage study room. Keep scrolling, keep scrolling. There we go, the lower level.
Hey, Brandon, what if the treads just protruded out an extra inch?
I believe that would be okay.
That would do it?
Yes.
Okay. And there's no headroom implications at the bottom?
Not that I can recall off the top of my head. It's been some while since I've been on this inspection.
Is it possible to make that any different? It doesn't look like you could add another. It doesn't look like you could modify that any differently than what it is.
Well, I think if you made the treads stick out an extra inch, that would do the trick, right?
Cool. But we have to keep in mind too that treads are measured from nosing to nosing.
Yeah, that
right.
wouldn't work.
So yeah, so if you extend just the treads, you still run into the same problem because of where the measurement needs to occur.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
If I could interject just slightly, could staff, Brandon or Mike, could you guys just explain the implications of this violation and what kind of hazard it would cause having the treads not be at the correct measurement?
So essentially, they become a trip hazard. The placement of a foot on the step, the more narrow you make that, the more likely you are to misstep. The wider the tread, it gives you a better footing to make sure that you're able to go up and down the stairs as you would expect in any common stair situation. Once you start varying from what is like commonly accepted, it increases the chance of somebody falling.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question on the receipt from October 7th of 65 of evidence that the stair was modified after it was built. I have a hard time construing from this exactly what work was done. Do we know specifically what was done under this?
This was the only record, and part of the reason that it came to the board was because it mentions the stairway, and I couldn't conclude whether or not during that process the stairs were modified.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been maintenance work or anything with this type of description.
Yeah, I can get as much from it as you can.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not very clear. Maybe the property owner can speak to it.
Yes.
I was just thinking, let's hear from George.
Yes. So this is Jörg Zeller. I'm the property owner. I think there's a misunderstanding here. So what stairs we are talking about in part. So the back entrance, if you look at the lower level, there's a back entrance door, and outside the back entrance door here on the south side of the lower level, there is a staircase that is, however, not drawn into the floor plan. And if you look in the permit that was filed by Payur in 1966, it states that they worked on the back entrance staircase. Payur being a concrete and base, foundation and basement contractor, I would assume have repaired or renewed a concrete staircase on the back entrance, which this is. I mean, I've taken pictures of that. It's not included in the variance application, but I assume that the permit that was filed in 1966 by Payur refers to this back entrance staircase, while the staircase that I applied a variant, or I filed a variance for, is the one that is drawn in the storage study going up to the kitchen. So it's shown both in the lower level, it's that staircase that goes up to the kitchen, or it's in the ground level that comes down then from the kitchen into the basement. So I think there is a confusion about which staircase Payur filed an application, filed a permit for in 1966, and the staircase that I apply here, that I filed a variance for. Does that make sense, what I said?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So
Yes.
you're saying that there's this, so the door at the south end of the storage study is an exterior door that leads immediately up a concrete staircase outside?
Yes.
And we think that's what the permit might be for, based on
Yes.
Payur being
That is what
a concrete company.
Right. And
Thank
it's
you.
a concrete staircase. I have taken pictures of it yesterday. I could show them to you. I can also could send it. I put them in a PDF file. I could send it by email if I'm allowed. You can look at that. You can see, and these staircases are to code. The tread depth there is 10 inches of that concrete staircase. The riser is 7 inches, and they are over 4 feet wide. And I assume that the permit filed by Payur, since it states back entrance, refers to this staircase, but it is different from the staircase that is in the storage study area, which I believe is original to the house and was built in 1942.
This is Lisa Stelter, and I've been selling real estate for 35 years in Ann Arbor. I've never seen Payur do work to an interior staircase. I believe that the gentleman is correct, and he's talking about the exterior foundation, because Payur is a foundation cement basement contractor. So I agree that I don't believe that any of the Payurs would have ever touched interior steps.
That was my conclusion or assumption, kind of in asking the question also, that this potentially was a different stair than the one we were looking at.
So could one assume then those steps that we're talking about were the original steps to the house?
Yes, I mean, so the variants I applied for, they are inside the house, and I believe they are original. And I looked at the possibility to extend the noses. I think that wouldn't be feasible, or to remove the frets. I would have to completely remove the staircase and rebuild it, or have it done by a contractor. There is, however, sufficient space there to bring it a little further out. I think that is true too. And I see I'm here I had not turned my camera on, but I can show you here. This is the a picture here of the outside staircase. Oops. Which I believe that's the one that Payeur has filed a permit for. And this staircase has a 10-inch tread depth, 7-inch riser, over 4 feet in width.
So this is Kristin. I guess I have a question back maybe to the city. So the primary purpose for the stair rise and runs are, for obviously entrance and exit. Given that there's a secondary exit to this space, does that meet the intent of the code? Or does the city feel because there's stairs, all stairs should comply with the code?
Because those stairs are there and existing and they're part of the space, they should conform to code.
Okay.
Agree.
And then, Mr. Zeller, did you happen to get any estimates of what the cost might be to rebuild those stairs when you were investigating this issue?
I did not. Would I be allowed to rebuild them myself? Or?
I'd ask the city to answer that.
That would be up to the building official, but that would have to be done by a licensed builder.
Licensed builder, right?
Yeah, since the residential rental property, it would be required that the person have a residential builder's license.
So the city used to approve 8-inch tread depth staircases. Is there a change in the interpretation of the code there?
There's no change in the language to the code. So our code's been around since about 65, 66, and all stair treads have to be a minimum of 9 inches.
The reason I was asking, there's another application there about a staircase, and there it said the 8-inch tread depth in that application would, I think, qualify for variance, but for other purposes, since there's a winder in there, it wouldn't. And that's why I'm asking.
So we still have a confusion on this one of what was original to the home. And if we're seeing evidence that we are, if we're going to accept that the permit was for a separate set of stairs, then it would be under a different consideration. But because there was an outstanding or a permit issued for that, we would need to reconsider it once we've determined if the work was done on that back staircase. And that would be a different consideration. That's where there's a difference between the two staff reports between the two different properties.
Well, it's not two different properties, but there's the variance I filed is for the staircase from the basement into the kitchen, while the outside back entrance staircase was not flagged during the city inspection.
I'm going to go ahead and make a clarification here. As I look at the inspection report, which we apologize, it should have been included in the staff report, but actually both of the staircases were flagged. And so, but I agree with you that what you are applying for, you pointed out the correct one that you're applying for, but they were both flagged on the report.
The front staircase was flagged, and that is repaired. It's the front entrance that is in the city report where the riser was too high. it was 10 inches and could not be more than 9 inches. That is corrected, but the city report from Brandon Box does not flag any issues with the back staircase.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
So I mean, if I understand it correctly, if the staircase is original to the house from 1942, it would be, the variance would be granted. Is that correct? Or would be considered original to the house and could be granted?
I think that's what Mike Lemieux was just expressing, that we would need to probably bring this back to the board, and we would need to look at it from a different angle, because I think we had information about a different set of stairs. And so it would need to be re-reviewed, and we can't give you a definite answer that it would be approved or not approved, but we would need to review that and make sure that it is the original staircase.
And from perspective, two comments. One, I'd say the payers bill of sale or whatever, to me does not, I don't think it has much relevance here, because it's uncertain it was for the stairway and likely it wasn't. And I would say too, in the past, this board, there has been a precedent for approving, 8-inch treads in older homes where they were, originally installed, provided it represented a significant hardship. And sometimes that does, particularly, if you have landings that can't be adjusted, it's pretty extensive to modify a house for the newer tread requirements.
I have a question. Is there an egress window in the basement? And what is the purpose of the basement space?
There is egress windows, 2 of them, and there's a back door. The purpose of the basement space is it's used as storage, and it is also used, there's a separate mechanical room with a furnace, washer dryer there, a washer sink. The basement is also, there's a desk in there.
So there are 2 egress windows plus the old payer steps to get to the outside of that building?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the steps there are to code.
Okay. Are there any other questions or discussion? Based on what I'm hearing, it sounds like, given the information on the, it's not really a permit, right? It's a note from payer. Does the city want to take this back and review it further before bringing to the board next month? Or would you like us to proceed with a vote?
Are you asking city staff? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I am asking city staff, sorry.
I think that if we would like it to be timely for the applicant, a vote now would be the quickest way to resolve the issue. But if it needs to come back for staff review, we're happy to do that as well.
Okay. Right. Well, I guess I will look to the board. Do you have any final questions or considerations, or are you prepared to make a motion? And who would like to make that motion? Glenn, did you have something to say before we move on?
Yes, I do. I have a question. How many steps are involved in this staircase in question? And what kind of hardship would it be in replacing the treads or rebuilding the staircase? Being a little bit familiar with cost of construction, although lumber has gone through the ceiling, I'm not sure that it couldn't be reframed and rebuilt reasonably without too much of a hardship. But that's just my opinion.
And may I answer here?
Yes.
So I looked at this. The treads cannot be removed easily. Applying an extended bullnose, so we would have to. It's I believe 6 or 7 steps. I think it's 6, 7 with the landing, or it might be 8 with 7. It's 6 steps. I think that have to be modified, and so they would have to be the first one 1 inch and the last one 6 inches bullnose extension. The tread. Removing a tread, I looked at that. That's not easily doable. Someone would have to rebuild it.
Is it possible to, scab on successive longer nosings to the treads and then re-support underneath? If you follow me.
Right. My impression was rebuilding the whole thing might be easier than doing that. So
if you push the bottom step out into that room another 6 inches, would that, did anybody notice, Brandon, for instance? I'm just going to ask about the headroom again. Imagine that bottom step being 6 inches further out into that room. Did you notice if there was a headroom issue, if you had to stand on that top step, or the bottom step, but it was further out?
No, I don't know what that impact would be without running the measurements.
The reason I'm asking is because if you not only had to rebuild the stairs, but then carve out more headroom on the way down, that's a little bit more significant.
I think there could be an issue with headroom there. And remember, Brandon measuring it, and it's tight with the headroom on the bottom stairs, or the bottom 2 stairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm looking through and I'm looking at the reasons for a variance, and it's practical difficulties or undue hardship. Variance does not violate the intent of section 8502 of the Ann Arbor Housing Code. Or the variance does not jeopardize public health and safety. And I think, part of the reason for the rise and the run is fire safety and fire exits. And we've got an exterior method for that here. So, again, it's a benefit a lot of basements don't have. But I also understand that there's, that the staircase could be rebuilt, but it would be helpful to obviously have that information about headroom. And without knowing that, it's hard to say whether or not that's a viable option.
Right, Kristin, and I'd also state that given the age of the house and the head clearances, it's, not unreasonable to assume that you may be creating a clearance issue by just extending those nosings out, which then does create, in my mind, a hardship.
Glenn, I see your hand up.
I might suggest that we revisit it to see if there is a headroom problem and bring it back to the board. Because that would be a true hardship if we do have a headroom problem, because that's also an issue. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Jorg, given that you're the applicant here, I don't know what your timeline is. If waiting another month to gather some more information would be acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the reasonable thing to do, yes.
Where are we with site visits nowadays with the COVID times, and are we able to do that, Leisha?
Yes, as a matter of fact, you can. What we would ask is that you just, instead of like, I think traditionally maybe 3 members will go. So what we would do is maybe 1 or 2 would go, and in intervals into the house, so that we don't have a big group of people in the house at one time. But you are certainly welcome to do site visits, and we can set that up from the staff perspective.
Tim, just a question, are we talking a site visit or are we talking about the city? You know, in this case, there's nothing. I think we can see what we need to see from the pictures. In this case, it's just confirmation or that, you know, extending these treads out would or wouldn't create a head clearance issue. Because in my mind, this was original construction. There's a precedent for accepting an 8-inch tread in original construction, provided that it's a hardship, you know, significant hardship to alter the stairs. So that's kind of the information we don't really have today, and we can make assumptions, but yeah, if you're now talking about cutting away ceiling somehow on the floor above, I think you're definitely getting into a hardship, at least in my mind.
That's what I would want to know. You have to carve into the ceiling above, because then whatever is above it, that also has to be altered and so on.
Yeah.
But it's hard to tell from these pictures. Therefore, at least maybe one of the staff revisiting.
Right, and though other means.
Is the house currently vacant?
It is not vacant right now, but we could make it so.
All right. Well, it sounds like the owner is willing to have the city come back out there and evaluate the headroom if the staircase were to be extended. And so if that is something that could be done, I guess I would maybe entertain a motion to table this appeal to our July meeting, pending more information on whether or not extending the stair tread would cause a hardship.
Well, and Kristin, do we also want to request, so if there's not a clearance issue, would we ask the owner to get a price on what it would cost to modify the stairs, so we can consider that also as to whether that represents a hardship or not?
I think that would certainly support a case for hardship.
Yeah.
All right, not hearing any other discussion, I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring and make a motion to table this appeal to our July meeting, pending additional information from both the appellant and the city. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thanks, Tim. All in favor? Please say
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Thanks everyone for that discussion. I look forward to revisiting the issue next month.
Thank you.
Do we have a date of that meeting? Just because I understand from the letter that the tenants were trying to July 1st, so I'd like to be able to give them up.
That's our next appeal.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. So our next appeal is the one where we heard Caitlin, and that's for 1230 Van Duzen.
Sorry about that. I was jumping.
I think it's helpful to know the date of the July meeting anyway, and I want to say that is July 13th. Does that sound right, Deborah?
The HPA meeting is indeed July 13th.
Excellent. I have like 17 screens open in front of me, so I guess it's better than a pile of papers. Okay. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is the variance appeal for 1230 Van Dusen. Just going to scroll all the way down to that piece in the appellate packet. Okay, and it looks like this is an appeal for fire exits for a variance from 85044B2 for stair tread, as well as the winder section. So could we have the staff report on this, please?
Staff recommend that the variance not be granted as the stairway does not meet the standards adopted at the time of construction nor the current building code standards and does not comply with the minimum requirements of section 8504 of the housing code. The building department would administratively approve the tread depth of 8 inches, but cannot allow the winder part of the stairway to remain as it has been deemed unsafe by the building official, which is allowed per section R102.7. That's an attachment here. And must meet the requirements of section 311.7.5.2.1 of the 2015 Michigan Residential Code. That's also attached, and that specifies the requirements for the winder stairs. In particular, when we go to the picture on this, you can see the element that is most concerning, and it's in that the narrow corners, the stair turns. And you have almost two step heights there where there's not anything for a foot to land on. And I think that presents a serious hazard.
Okay, and can you just provide the level of detail of what the stair winder sizes are and what is approved so that we can understand the variance here?
Yeah. I guess, are you asking for the code section requirements?
The code section requirements, and then just looking at the winders, and maybe I'm not seeing it right now, what those winders are and how far away they are from being approved. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have the code section attached. Let me get to it. Give me 1 second. I've done something to my packet here and I've zoomed in way too close. Let me just pull up my code book real quick and I can get to that section. All right, so winder treads shall have a tread depth of not less than 10 inches measured between the vertical planes of the foremost projections of adjacent treads at the intersection with the walk line. Winder treads shall have a minimum depth of not less than 6 inches at any point within the clear width of the stair. With any flight of stairs, the largest winder tread depth at the walk line shall not exceed the smallest winder tread depth by more than 3/8 of an inch. Consistently shaped winders at the walk line shall be allowed within the same flight of stairs at rectangular treads and do not have to be within the 3/8 inch of the rectangular depth. So essentially the concerning part to me when we look at the step tread is that shouldn't or can't be less than 6 inches at any point. And when we look at the pictures of how that winder stair works, you can see where, you know, there's essentially nothing for a foot to land on for several inches on that step. And then that kind of continues for multiple steps.
Can we show that drawing again, or the photo of the winders?
sorry, I was muted. I think it's page 38, if I've got it right.
42.
Oh, man, I don't know. It's 38 on mine, but yeah, it's probably 42. That sounds good. That one. Oh, go back.
Oh, sorry. I was giving you the photo. Sorry about that, Kristin. You were right. Do we know what the distance is between the last the tread 9 and presumably the basement wall where it says foundation wall? I'm assuming we don't, but
Can you repeat that question again?
do we know the distance between the nosing of tread number 9 as it's listed and the foundation wall directly below it? Is there sufficient width there for, egress? My thought is, could the bottom winder sections be replaced so 10, 11, and 12 become a landing, and then you have treads then extending out to the left into the basement? And I know our job's not to design it, but I'm just thinking in terms of hardship, because right now you've got a first floor elevation, you've got a wall, so anything that extends the 8-inch tread width is going to create, you're just running into a wall, which gets to be a hardship. But potentially one solution to this is to create a landing at what's now tread 10, and then continue with landing with stairs at the same rise and run, down to the basement.
If the drawing is to scale, it says 1 inch equals 1 foot, and I'm assuming that each square is based on 1 inch, if I'm reading this right. But again, it's going to be a guesstimate. I don't have the strict measurements.
I think 1 square equals 3 inches-ish.
1 square equals 3 inches. Okay.
Yeah, that would. But again, it looks like there's 30. The photos may be deceiving, and it looks like that landing would be much narrower. But from the sketch, it looks like the landing potentially would have the same width as the stair width, the 32 inches, maybe even more.
I think it's 32.
Okay.
What's the minimum for a landing? Is there one?
There is. Here, I would say you're somewhat constrained by the existing stairway.
It looks like it would be a good idea, but would you have headroom issues again if you made that stair 10 a landing and then did the 11, 12, 13 down to a 90-degree angle?
Yeah, you're also taking up some real estate in the basement. I don't know what's there, if you've got clearance at the bottom, but yeah, those are all good questions.
I'm sorry. I'm the homeowner. I don't know the procedure to be able
Hi,
to.
John. Go for it.
So if you look, because that I immediately thought, could I sneak that landing at tread 10? If you look to the left side of that same page, I was going to point to it on my laptop, but you wouldn't see where I was pointing. You can see where it says height from winder steps to basement ceiling. And so at tread 10, from the top of tread 10 to the basement ceiling is 65 inches and 3/4, which is not enough headroom.
Not enough. No.
And then I did it for tread 11, tread 12, tread 13, and tread 9. And there isn't enough headroom. There is enough room to run into the basement. The catch is the headroom.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, that explains why they didn't do it that way in the first place.
Hi, John, this is Angie. Is there an egress window or another way out of that basement besides these stairs?
There are 3 egress windows, 2 that are in what would be the continuation of the room that the stairs discharge into. And then there is another room in that basement, and it has an egress window as well.
Okay, just checking on the being able to get out if there was a tripping situation.
Glenn?
I can't hear him.
I can't either. Glenn, are you muted?
I was. Hi, John. Glenn Dempsey, building official. Do you have a closet above that area where the winders are? What is
No,
above it?
it's an open stairway. So when you walk into it, the height of the ceiling in that stairway, it consumes the whole stairway. It's not a slanted roof or anything. Am I describing? Do you get what I'm saying there? There's
the staircase. Where does it start in the building itself, in the house?
So if you look at my very non-technical drawings, but it's has a picture. Let's see, where am I? It's the one that has let's see. I'm sorry, I'm trying to orient myself. Not that one, the other one. Oh, wait a minute. Did I actually give you a main floor one? Should have numbered these. Can you stop? The one that I can see on the screen, you can see where it says 23 by 15. That's the garage. It has an arrow pointing towards the stairway, so you can see where it falls in the house. So if we were to extend the stairway, we'd lose the access to the garage from the house, and then also it would cut that entry that goes from the front all the way back to the bedrooms. It would eliminate that as well. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. Another question for you. In the floor framing above that winder area, is there a way to header off and support the floor above to create a higher ceiling height?
The joists run parallel to the main run of the stairway. So if you, I don't know if you, I don't know how you'd support the floor above it, because that's the entry floor. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Which way are the floor joists running, with the staircase or against the staircase?
They run parallel to the staircase. They say
top
so,
to bottom in the picture we're looking at, right?
Correct.
Yes.
So they run from where the address is on the front towards the back of the page.
John, do you know what depth the joists are? Just out of curiosity.
You mean the, like, off the top of my head, I guess they'd be 2x10s.
Okay.
I mean, if you really had to know, I could run over there and
that's okay.
This is the original stairs with the home. The only modification we did to the stairway was put carpet on it, paint it, and then added balusters because the previous one did not have balusters.
Yeah, I think you have a serious problem there, because somebody's going to slip at some point in time, and they're not going to just drop down one step. They're going to drop down a couple, and you may have a ankle breaking situation here. I've seen these before, and that's the biggest concern and why we were looking at it. Of course, why we're here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 32 to 40-inch drop potentially, depending on whether you hit that last tread or not.
Yes.
Mike, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just, I wanted to comment and mention, was this a change of use? Was that just storage at some point that became habitable space?
No, when we bought the home, it was a finished basement. It had, you know, that 50s knotty pine. It had one large opening and then a bathroom and like another kind of storage area. And so the use did not change in the sense of, I assume the previous owner used it as a basement where their kids would play, etc.
And it was refinished recently?
Yes, we went in and updated the basement. The knotty pine didn't work for us. We wanted to put more wiring in it, etc. And it just was easier to redo it.
And then that's all, you're working on the permits for that currently?
I am, yes. It's shocking how difficult this, the way we did this is, but we're working through it.
So layout wise, if I could, looking at the photo from the top of the stairs down to the winding, which potentially could be the landing, not that one. Not that one. That one. So to the right of the hand railing, that's garage.
No, to the right of the hand railing is the basement. To the left is the garage.
What's on the main floor to the right of that railing?
The main entryway. So if we were to go in and remove the flooring, etc., to allow headroom for to do a landing and then L the steps down, then we'd have to have a new front entry door because that's where the front.
Okay, yeah, I get you.
Glenn, you had mentioned that you're familiar with these winder staircases. Do you have other, and again, I know that's not the city's role necessarily to provide solutions, but other suggestions given what we know about the layout of this property? Because it sounds like there's some particular challenges here.
Yeah, it's a very tough scenario. Have you had a contractor look at this to see how he might be able to reinvent that lower area to give you some headroom height and still and correct the stairs to where you have more of a landing than a winder?
The contractor that's working us through the process, when I explained that there was an issue with the winders and the steps, he told me I have no options. This is the way that was made, and there's no way to go in and create a landing and create the headroom necessary for a landing to go into the last 3 steps into the basement.
And what height, where that first winder hits, John, what is the height off that winder to the ceiling?
Can you tell me which number you're talking about?
Yeah, back to 38.
So the basement floor to the ceiling, it's 8 feet 0. And then when you step up onto step number 13, is that the step you're talking about, or step number 9 or 10?
Well, I'm talking about 10. So you're looking at
10 is 65 inches 3/4. And that's even 72 inches wouldn't be acceptable.
No, understand.
I've tried to come up with, I just can't figure out a solution. I do know that this is the Van Dusen subdivision, and there's kind of a repeating pattern to homes in this neighborhood. In other words, it's the same model duplicated, maybe with some slight variations. And there is a home in this neighborhood that had an extensive remodel, and that was in 2012, and they were granted a variance on the same steps. I think I talked with Deborah about that, and she could not locate the city paperwork on that. I talked with the owners of that property, and they're the ones who, I said, look, blah, 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 our steps don't mean code. And they go, ours didn't either. They gave us a variance. I tried contacting their builder via phone and email, and the builder never got back with me. And Deborah, I thought, I'm not exactly sure, but searched city records and couldn't locate that specific instance.
That is correct.
Yeah, this is really a difficult situation. I completely understand the city's concerns in terms of, if you're coming down the right side of that stair. But yeah, you almost wonder how this got permitted in the first place. And it sounds like there's no evidence of, this wasn't a new stair put in where someone tore out an old one. And I'm presuming the house always had access from the first floor to the basement.
And there's another home on Crosby Crescent as well that has same floor plan, same winder steps, and it still has the 1950s basement where the knotty pine tile floor, etc. I mean, that's just how Van Dusen, who is the builder, squeezed that steps into this floor plan.
Yeah, this is I understand it is a tough situation. It's also a big safety issue. You said your floor joists were 2x10s, you believe?
I believe I do live very close to this property. If you really wanted to know, if you gave me 5 minutes, I could run over and measure them. I'm pretty confident they're 2x10s. Actually, they might even be the same as mine. I don't know why they would choose a different floor joist from house to house. I'm going to step away for a second and just go have a peek.
And then I guess I'll take this opportunity to remind the board that this is also the variance where we received the letter from the renters indicating that they needed to, they were hoping to take possession, I guess, by July 1st. And we heard from Caitlin, I think one of the renters, Caitlin, I think I got the name right. Sorry if I didn't. And given how tight and difficult the housing market is, I do want to, just make sure that we're keeping that in terms of our time frame, right? So that there's a decision to be made. If this doesn't move forward favorably, that they have as much time as they need, or if it does, that they can rest assured. So either way.
Well, what would be the outcome of the homeowner taking no action? I'm assuming the basement is then unoccupiable.
It's a good question. I don't know.
I might ask John one more question. I think it was in the pictures. You have a handrail on just one side of the stairs or on both sides?
That's correct.
It's on one side?
There is a handrail only on one side. That's correct.
Thank you.
If you need a handrail on the other side, we can have our contractor put a handrail on the other side. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, can staff answer Kristen's question? I think there's always an option of just not making it habitable space, but can Inspector Boggs or Glenn answer the question?
This house was previously had uninhabitable finished basement. It was a partially finished as a rec space with a little bit of basement bathroom stuff in it, but nothing big. And then was more recently completed with a bedroom and a bathroom.
You recall what year that was, Brandon, that they did the renovation?
It's still under the permit process now.
Oh. Thank you.
The joists in my home, which is in the same neighborhood, they are 2 by 8s. No, that can't be right. Well, it's 9 1/4, so that would make it a 2 by 10, I think.
Yeah.
I have a question for staff. If we added a second handrail, I know that there's a tripping hazard there and I do understand the situation. But if there was a second handrail added, would that influence your decision at all?
Would say no. That wouldn't change the decision.
Okay.
I would second that as well.
I'm also going to add in here that because this is under the permitting process, it looks like a permit was just pulled on 6/3 to finish the basement. I'm a little confused as to why these stairs were not included as part of the permitting process when you're trying to convert a space to habitable space. It should also include looking at the stairways. And so is there a reason that was not included on the permitting process?
Are you speaking to me?
Yes.
We did the basement, we redid the basement ourselves. We were clearly not aware of the issue with winders and tread depths. And so since we didn't touch the stairs, the builder who is helping us with the permitting process didn't include those in his whatever you call it when they submit the paperwork.
Okay, so just for my clarification, the building permit was submitted as a building permit to review work that had already been completed, correct?
That's correct. We're trying to get this house up to snuff.
Gotcha. Okay.
But with a 2 by 10, even if you took that depth to 0, which you can't do, you still don't make it. Correct? Because when you turn that corner, you'd be, let's say you gained 6 inches, you're still going to be at, when you come off tread 10, let's say that's the landing elevation, you're still going to be at like 6 feet. And that's even if you're able to carve out quite a bit of the joist. So it seems like there's, just my guess would be there's probably not an option, even with reframing or going to steel or something like that in lieu of the floor joists to make it work.
I thought I saw someone's hand up, but I don't see it up right now. So if I'm missing it, please let me know.
It was Glenn, but he put it back down.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought.
I did remove it.
Okay.
So I've got a question for Glenn. What if you, for lack of a better term, put a newel post at the bottom where those winders come down to nothing, that you had to walk around, but there was enough width up above the newel post to satisfy the tread width, but just the newel post was big enough so that you could not step where the tread goes down to nothing, but so you had to step around it. You ever approved anything like that?
Yeah, you probably are infringing on your width quite a bit in order to move it in far enough to give some type of tread there, but
better than having those steps that go down to nothing, because I had a staircase like that in my house in Maryland, and I was the homeowner, so my falling down that portion of the stairs, that was my own problem. But in this case, so there's not like a hub that you only had to, put your hand on and step around at the very bottom. You understand what I mean?
yeah, I think so.
Imagine like a basketball on top of a 6x6.
So, yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's going to infringe in the width quite a bit.
Yeah.
If you might have a question for John, again, you just turned in paperwork for that the building permit for this remodel.
Yes.
Okay, and then going back to the picture, and I'm trying to find it right now on the heights. What is the height of the basement itself to the bottom of the joist?
8 feet.
You got a full 8 feet, so you got ceiling height requirements when you're in the basement. You got your ceiling requirements met?
Yes. It's an 8 foot. It's an 8 foot ceiling. Actually, in some spots, it's even higher than 8. Is that right? I'm not in the house. I don't recall exactly, but it's an 8 foot ceiling from the basement floor to the basement ceiling. At least for sure at that step area. Might be slightly lower in the main area of the basement.
So a question for city staff, since there's a permit pending for modification of this, is this is additional information. Is it appropriate that the board is addressing this and it's not being addressed as part of the permitting issue or process?
Jerry, you're right on track. I was just about to interject. That's one of the reasons why I asked about the permit. Seeing that,
Right.
looking at the records, and it just got submitted last week. So actually, this probably should be moved to, if a variance would be granted because they are creating space, habitable space, it should be a BBA situation. If a variance is actually granted, it should be moved to a different board and reviewed, because the permitting process is going to be, that stairway should actually be added to the permit. They're creating habitable space, so it does need to be added to the permit. And that at that point, is it going to get denied or approved to create the habitable space with that existing staircase? And that's when you ask for the variance.
Thank you, Alicia. I believe that would be my opinion also. I was looking at the application. It's very limited information. And I know when my plan reviewer responds, there will be quite a bit of questions on it. But the staircase would be important with regards to the building permitting for construction.
So is this a situation where the city is withdrawing the variance and moving it to the permitting process?
Chris, and I believe that would be the right course for this. Not realizing that we had the application just recently submitted. And we can discuss with the owner on fees that were paid and so forth in moving into this hearing here. So I'm sure there's some adjustments that we can make to move this properly through the process. And I believe it would go back, it'd probably go to the Building Board of Appeals because of the access to that habitable space that's being created.
I actually do have some questions when you're done chatting, just for clarification for me.
Sure.
So the basement was finished, was a finished basement prior, but was not considered by the city habitable space. And so I'm not sure how that works, because it being that it had finished walls, etc., it seemed pretty finished to us. So then, if I was the homeowner living in the property, this gets treated somewhat differently than it is as a rental property. Is that correct?
So when you go to habitable space and so forth, the concerns would be that the bottom line is the safety issue at the very bottom. And it can be brought up throughout any of these processes, because that's my biggest concern. Any occupant of your property that you're coming in and we're becoming aware of, you have a serious situation that I wouldn't want anybody to break an ankle or a leg or cause other issues in their health because of that drop from those stairs.
And so, Glenn, since this clearly is what you're good at, I'm getting the feeling that even through all the permitting process, unless we can change how that winder is made, that stairway is not going to get approved.
I would like to get some pictures on it, or get an inspector to take a look at it to get some opinions. I'd like to talk with your contractor more about it, but I am very concerned. So not only is it, you will not be living there, you have a renter that'll be living there. I'm concerned with what might happen after this is all corrected. And that's one of the things we're looking at when we review these plans. So
no problem. Where I'm going with this is, these people are expecting to move in July 1st. And so that's why, I mean, I really, if you were to ask Deborah or Brandon or Chris, I've been in contact with them regarding mechanical, electrical, plumbing, builder. The builder was a very difficult person to get a hold of because it is a really busy time for them, which I'm sure you're aware. And so our dilemma now, we push up against when Caitlin and John were to move in. If I can't get the variance on the steps, then I can't rent to them. And part of contacting Deborah in April was trying to figure out, can we resolve this issue so these people can move in? And if they can't, we give them some time to find another place to live. And from what I'm hearing today is that's incredibly unlikely. And so we need to proceed a different way with our home, because I mean, I can sell the house to someone, they can know the problem and they can decide what to do, but I can't rent it to someone. I think that's what you're telling me.
yeah, I think with the situation, if it were considered storage, it might come under a different envelope. You're looking to finish it and call it habitable space. That's something we would have to review further.
Okay. And the risk is so if these people move in and then you say, no, it's not habitable space, what's the procedure then? A lock gets put on that door and they can't go down there? Or I can't visualize how that would work.
So as storage space, you have storage spaces throughout buildings in various locations. You have storage in attics, you have storage in basements, and they're entered upon the situation of being aware that you're going in a storage area. You're not going to be traveling it in a regular situation. You won't have people visiting those areas on a regular basis, friends and so forth. So storage areas just are treated a little bit differently, and you just have to be cautious where you're going. But habitable space going up and down on a regular basis to visit that location can be an issue. And so I guess that's where I'm looking at. So I wouldn't mind seeing some more pictures and seeing if there's anything that maybe your contractor hasn't come across or come into that he might be able to affect or correct the situation. Is there any way to pull that stairway back into the house a little bit, enough to eliminate that winder problem? I'm not sure. I myself would love to see some more pictures on it and maybe get some more eyes on it to take a look. I understand your concern and wanting to get your applicant or your rental, the people that are going to rent from you, get them in there. But
yeah,
I definitely think it needs to be addressed further.
I hear that. I just like, there are lots of people that need to be treated fairly here, and mostly it's the renters because they're the group that's coming in from the outside. Clearly, we didn't follow the process right, and so now we're trying to figure out how to make it up. I just, short of, the only way I could figure out how to make this stairway work would be to drag it into the house, which would, like I said previous, would block the door to the garage, which the garage doesn't have to have a door to it. But then it also, like, there's essentially a hallway that kind of moves through the house, and I don't know how that changes like flow stuff, if that's an issue or not. I you know what, I'm wasting your time here because you're clearly, you need to table this to a different, actually it sounds like you're passing this on to the building department and are going to let them decide how to manage this, I think is what you said, the building board of appeals. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe this would go into the building board of appeals.
Okay. All right. And that's, well, here, I don't want to hold you up. You didn't sign up for this to talk to me all afternoon. I appreciate your time. Clearly would have liked the variance to be granted like the other home in our neighborhood, but I understand that renters are treated different than homeowners. Is there a place to look at how I can go to the renters and say, look, you can't use that as habitable space, but you can use the basement as storage space? Is if we included that in the lease, like made an addendum to our lease, does that meet the intent there? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I think part of the issue is going to be that the basement's already been completed. The work is already completely done. So I think that might be part of the problem.
Well, is there a definition of what storage space is supposed to be like? I mean, it can be a really nice storage space. The catch is, once they move into the house, I don't have any control over it. It's their home. And so how they were to use it, unless I go in and check up on them, I wouldn't know how they're using it. So I like I said, I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you so much. And I guess either Glenn or Brandon, I'll be hearing from you while we're and Deborah working our way through this process.
So John, I just might ask why I have you here. I can get back with you tomorrow and discuss this further. I wouldn't mind seeing what you have there, but we can pick this up again tomorrow if you're available. So,
do you have my phone number? I wouldn't mind talking with you. I mean, it would be nice to resolve this. My concern is this poor couple. It's like they move in July. A week later, they leave for Long Island and are getting married. They were supposed to get married last summer. Of course, that didn't happen. And so, I can't imagine laying more stuff onto this couple. So, anyway, Glenn, I think you must have my phone number and something that would be great if you did call. Is your area code a 517? So when I see it, I don't think it's spam.
I believe I have probably an email for you too. I can send you an email and set up a time.
That would be great. Thank you.
I do believe we have, John Reiser, you had wanted to have an opportunity to say something, and there is also another hand raised.
Yeah, so remember, there's an agenda, and on this agenda is an item for 1230 Van Dusen. And it's the board's call as to whether or not, they're going to put a motion before the board. In other words, there's a proposed motion. The board could grant this appeal because they have that authority if they find that it presents practical difficulties or undue hardship, and that the variance does not violate the intention of the section 8504, and it doesn't jeopardize public health or safety. I'm not saying whether it does or it doesn't, but whether or not this is granted right now, it's up to the board. So don't withdraw if you want to withdraw it and talk later, you have that right, but you're also before the board on an appeal that you have a right to have heard. I know there's a lot of give and take on these boards, but we're operating under parliamentary procedure with an agenda, and you're an agenda item. So,
thanks. This is Kristin. I guess I have a question on that. So if the city is choosing to withdraw this because it's supposed to, it should be, I guess, as part of the permitting process and go to the building board of appeals, would they also have that right to withdraw it?
Well, it's my understanding that the applicant has put forward.
Or is it just the applicant?
Pardon? Right.
It's the applicant because it's the applicant that's appealing.
That's right. So it's his call. He could say, Glenn, it was nice talking to you. Thanks. I still want you to vote yes or no on it. And then he could take it to court, or he could withdraw, or you could table it to another date. I'm just saying there's a lot of give and take, but there's also a formal proceeding that let's not forget about, whether that's a motion to adjourn, a motion to table, a motion to.
The board still has to address the agenda item. Yes,
that's right. Don't forget it's still before you in some form.
Yes.
Right, John. But a question. Let's say we, for argument's sake, we approve it. I'm assuming this still goes back through the building process and will be reevaluated again. I'm assuming our approval does not supersede anything they would or wouldn't decide.
Well, with respect to, if you grant a variance under 8504 under the 9-inch tread, I think it's not the 9 inches so much, or maybe it is, but it's the corner, for lack of a better phrase, right?
Right. So this board, right? This board would have the ability to trump, the process of reviewing the permit.
Well, that is your statutory authority. Yes, or you don't do it. So, you get to issue variances to the code. Yes. Whether you should or shouldn't, that's within your province, your purview.
Understand.
Thank you, John.
And so the other John, I see you have your hand up.
Sorry. So I guess, John R., thank you very much for that. Well, I guess I would like you to take the time to vote on it, because if you were to vote yes, then we still have things that we need to take care of on this house. But the one thing that we can't change is the stairs, at least without significantly reworking the home.
And Kristin, if you could just, the I think it was the tenant that had their hand up. So if you could just acknowledge the tenant.
Oh, sorry, I don't have them on my screen. Was it Caitlin? Did you have something?
Yeah, Caitlin's got a question in the Q&A.
Got it. So just reading the question, it says, can I ask what happens for us in the meantime? Our current lease is up in July. I heard some conversation, but Caitlin, I didn't hear like kind of a strong answer. I think it sounds like it's going to, well, there's two processes here, right? We have the appeal before us. We also have the permits for the basement that are also being reviewed. I didn't hear an answer, or maybe, I'm sorry, maybe I'm just not recalling. We had a conversation about whether or not the basement is currently considered habitable space and whether the permitting process would change that. Again, I believe that might be through the Building Board of Appeals, so that's maybe less of the scope of this board typically. But the house isn't currently rented, right?
Correct.
Vacant? Okay.
Now, I'll also say that if you look on page 2, practical difficulties or undue hardship, the variance does not violate the intent, and I'm sure the intent is like safe stairways up and down. Variance does not jeopardize public health and safety. Again, that's your call. Maybe you think it does, maybe you think it doesn't. But there are also stipulations that you can attach to your approval if you want to approve it. I'm truly not trying to sway your vote. I'm just saying you have the prerogative to do what you will if you make certain findings, and you can attach certain stipulations to those findings.
Right, and I appreciate that. I mean, I think, it would be helpful to have something in from the construction authority or, the contractor saying that there's not an ability to alter the stairway. I mean, I think, you've provided that, John, owner John, not lawyer John, to us verbally based on conversations. It sounds like you've done a great job on the headroom, and I think that answered a lot of the questions. Practically speaking, I think that, it sounds like that, but it's difficult to determine with certainty. And I would imagine, given that there's these two processes going on, that makes the decision of this board particularly difficult because I think they both hinge off of each other. But I also fully appreciate the timeline that you're on and for your tenants.
Can city staff tell what is the minimum required width of that stairway?
32 inches.
Okay.
10 inches in the middle section though, right? Because there's
No, 32. It was the answer, Kristin. So the width of the stairway.
Oh, the width of the stairway. Sorry.
Right.
I was doing tread depth on the winder. And then I guess also from the city, is there any historical perspective of winder staircases and variances that you were able to determine when you were doing research on this particular house?
That was a question for the staff. If there's any, I don't know of any. That would require going into and looking at other properties and what was applied for and approved there. And I don't know if there's a history of doing that, or if we look at the properties on an individual basis and make a determination for that particular property, which is my understanding.
Right, but we're also trying to look at past practice and what precedents have been set.
So I wouldn't have any information about other winder staircases that have had variances approved.
Thank you. And Caitlin, I saw your question in the chat that you wanted to ask another question. Go ahead.
Hi, this is actually John, her husband. I was on a
Hi.
call at work. So I was just curious, has been trying to follow along, but I guess what's kind of the interim timeline? I think, like we said, we have our lease is up beginning of July in our current housing in Ann Arbor. We had signed this lease in January to move in July. You know, it puts us in a slightly precarious position. At the same time, it's a little frustrating with our current apartment was cited for being against code almost 16 months ago by the city, and neither the city nor the landlord has followed up about that. So it feels very frustrating to hear kind of this, given our current predicament with our current unit not being code compliant. So yeah, just any help about kind of what we should do, because honestly, being told you're not sure about housing 3 weeks from now feels like a bigger public health safety than the stairs at this point.
I'm going to offer up some, just some last thoughts for is from the perspective of our service area. What would be fair and equitable right now is that because if the rest of the house is fine, there are no other violations that need to be corrected, we would say, because you're going through the permitting process for the basement, we would ask that you just not use that as habitable space until it has been approved. That would probably be the best way to do it if you wanted to go that route, and that way the tenants are more than, well, you can still get a CFC with stipulations that the basement not be turned into habitable space until it goes through the permitting process. But as John Reiser mentioned, the board right here just needs to make some kind of decision as to whether they're going to approve a variance or they're not, or deny a variance. And actually, any other variances that would be requested would be if you are denied the permit through the building services process. So if you go through review and it is denied that you cannot get approved, then that asking a variance for that through the building process would go to the Building Board of Appeals. So at this juncture, this board needs to make a decision as to whether they're going to approve your request, deny it, table it, whatever they want to do. And then we would, from the rental housing standpoint, like I said, we would work with you to say you can't use the basement as habitable space at this point. And then we would move forward from there.
Thanks, Leisha.
That would be my suggestion.
That's helpful context. Can you maybe inform the board of the implications? So if we approve a variance, how does that play into the permitting process? If we deny a variance, how does that play into the permitting process? And if we table it, does that impact like the CFC?
So if you deny this variance and say that you're not going to do that, like I said, the options would be just that the basement cannot be habitable space. They can look at another option, but it can't be habitable space. Storage or whatever, as Glenn alluded to earlier. If you approve this variance, that I'm a little gray on as to what would happen from there, because this is still going through the permitting process. And so that I'm a little gray about, because if it gets denied through the permitting process, I'm not sure that your approval for the variance would hold up if it's in a building process. It is in the permitting process.
Leisha, but yeah,
There's in the permitting process.
They have submitted a permit, and it just got submitted, and it was submitted after the appeals was submitted. So they just applied for a permit as of June 3rd.
But yeah, sorry, just to keep asking the same question. I appreciate that, Alicia. But yeah, I thought I heard from John that if we approve this, then that's for the building authority, that's off the table. This is approved and that's the end of consideration. You know, from my perspective, there's no point in us approving something that's going to be looked at and reevaluated again. If there's, you know, if we approve it and then that's taken off consideration in the permitting process, then I could see the reason to consider approval.
But if it's approved, not that it's going to be, but if it's approved, then he might withdraw his request for permits because he won't need them anymore. If they're approved with any stipulations, you know, such as shall not use the basement as a habitable space or whatever you folks are talking about. But my understanding that people can always withdraw requests for building permits, and I would defer to Glenn on that.
But isn't the permit for a change in use?
For a finished basement is what the permit is stating. It is for a finished basement. I don't have the drawings and the plans in front of me, but it is for a finished basement. And if that includes, when you're turning it into habitable space, if that includes review of the stairs, I am not sure that the housing ordinance would trump the building code.
Right. That's yeah. Seems like that's would be my question as well.
And that's what I was alluding to. That if this is already in a building process under a building code, housing ordinance does not trump the building code.
Is it okay to table this for more information if it becomes an issue with the building department? Is that too many? Is that kicking the can too far down the road?
I'm not sure what tabling would do if it goes through the building process and it's going through review. Okay. And it gets denied through the building process and it goes to BBA. I'm not sure what tabling it from the HBA standpoint would do.
Okay, I get it.
I think to make long story short, I think this was presented to the wrong board. And it should have been through the building board of appeals. And because the building permit got submitted after the appeal, it really is for the applicant to withdraw his appeal to this board and appeal to the appropriate board. It's my suspicion. That's what I think. At this point, it's not, there's nothing for the Housing Board of Appeals to grant a variance for.
And if it were to be decided or tabled, depending on the decision, the CFC could proceed if the renters just didn't use the basement as habitable space. So that's still an option as well. Okay, so I think that answers your question, Caitlin. Oof. Man, after not having a lot of appeals, we've had a few really complicated ones here. All right. Oh, Deborah, did you have something?
No, I was just going to agree with you.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to kick the can either. I just normally this board has seen variances where there's been an inspection in an existing property, no intent to modify the space, and we can look at precedents there potentially and make a decision. In this case, there's also a permit being requested. So, the building board of approvals may have more perspective on precedent when something like that's going to happen. So it's difficult. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I agree, Jerry. I feel like, if we didn't have kind of this time pressure, I would certainly, my inclination, like setting aside the timing would be, because there's these two processes to have the building department go through their permitting process, separate from the rental piece. Because I think that's, I don't want one decision to influence one way or another the other decision. It seems like that's just the appropriate thing to kind of look through it one at a time. And if you're and it's my understanding that if you were to do a basement, the stairs are automatically included as the access point, regardless of whether or not there were modifications to that staircase. So I think maybe that's why it wasn't originally slotted into the permitting process. Are there any other items for discussion while we're on this topic?
So for John, are our only options to approve or deny, or is another option to,
There's lots of options. The applicant could withdraw based on conversations with Glenn or applicant or you. The applicant could, ask that his application be considered, and it's on your agenda for so. And then you could approve it outright. You could approve it with stipulations. You could deny it. If you do deny it, you're going to state, what your rationale for is. And if you look on pages 2 and 3, you have before you in your packet all the information that you need to make your decision, or to table it to that first, your meeting in July. And then it never gets brought back if it's the wrong forum. That's something that Mr. Strite and Mr. Dempsey can work on in the interim.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Jerry. Were there any other questions, comments, concerns before we make a motion? Because I heard homeowner John that you did want us to move forward with a decision or discussion today.
You're here, and I've presented everything I know. It would seem that why wouldn't you? And then it would just give us a starting point for what to do next.
I guess I'm asking them who all feel comfortable with the motion. Well, I guess I should make a motion to maybe approve the variance with the basement being used as storage space only at this time, unless the building department allows for the stairs to be used to access livable space. How'd I do?
Great.
And I would ask Deb Williams, are you the keeper of the records?
I am.
And do you need that read back, or do you need to?
If she could read that back for me, that would be awesome.
Okay, so do I need to list the variance in my motion?
Yes.
Okay.
You'll need to come up with a rationale, 1, 2, or 3, or some version of those 3. And then if there are any stipulations to which you are granting your appeal, assuming it passes, you'll need to have those again on page 2. the stipulations attended to or pertinent to your motion to grant it.
Okay.
I'll share my screen so you can.
I'm double screening today, so I'm trying to do this myself, but oh my gosh, I forgot we're way down at the bottom. Okay. So this is where I always run into the trip it up part. Oh, sorry, I went back too far. I apologize. I know everybody's trying to get out of here. Let's see. Housing Board of Appeals. Okay. I propose to approve Housing Board of Appeals request number HBA 21-003 at 1230 Van Dusen to approve the variance on the stipulation that the basement is used for storage only, period. And if the approval, or sorry, with the approval of the staircase to access habitable space be given to the Building Board of Appeals. Due to financial hardship because he already has a lease in place.
Okay.
Did I forget something, John? I'm sorry.
I would look at page 2, and maybe you are, that talks about the practical difficulties or undue hardship. The variance does not violate the intent of the section, and the variance does not. I would really look at that because that comes right out of your code, in our code, Ann Arbor Code 8515.
Okay, due to practical difficulties. Due to I guess I'm wondering if I'm speaking out of turn, I guess is the right way to say that. Because I know it by housing code. Oh, the variance doesn't jeopardize public health or safety if it is used for storage only. How about that? Discussion.
Yeah, so what you're doing is, it sounds like you haven't read verbatim from the proposed motion, but you're kind of crafting one yourself. Is that correct?
Well, I was trying to appeal granted based on, with the stipulation that it's used as storage space only. I thought that was something we had discussed could be.
It is, but
okay.
We're going to need two things. One, the basis, and the reason I'm trying to be so circumspect here, or
right,
nitpicky, but I'm just looking at 8515, and it talks about each decision under paren 5E about appeal and variance procedure, and it talks about each decision of the board shall be based on written findings of fact. For variances, the findings must include the grounds for finding, practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship. The variance does not violate the intent of this chapter. The variance does not jeopardize public health and safety. So those are the findings that you must have, and they're going to be in writing because Deborah Williams is going to put those in writings. So when the staff comes up with these suggested motions, pro or con, they're getting it right from the ordinance. And the reason we have to do that is to build a record in case a circuit court appeal is done, and we've followed, we've given everybody due process. We followed what our ordinance says in that. So that's why I'm being nitpickier than I should in polite company, but I'm trying to create this record and preserve this record.
I guess if I could ask the other members to help me, I guess I'm missing what I'm, I guess.
No. You just need the top part, which is the 1, 2, and 3, provided that you believe it and the board votes for it. And you also need the stipulation. It sounds like you got the stipulation, but don't forget about 1, 2, and 3.
So they have to meet 1, 2, and 3.
They don't have to meet all of them, Angie. It's or, so it's
Okay, so in other words, start all over, say number 3, then put the stipulation. How about that? In
Correct.
order, okay,
I would, Angie.
yeah,
You may, I think maybe a way to do it would be to stipulate 1, practical difficulties and undue hardship, and then your stipulations would cover, the premise for granting this.
oh, okay. All right, so I move to grant the appeal in HBA 21-003 of the appeals of the building official's decision at the rental property at 1230 Van Duzen to approve the variance due to practical difficulties or undue hardship, with the stipulation that the basement be used as storage only and not habitable space, period, with the staircase issue to be addressed by the Building Board of Appeals. Thank you for whoever was typing.
That would be me.
Deborah, you're my hero.
all right. We have a motion. I see we have a couple of hands up, and normally this is time for board discussion, but I'm gonna entertain John and Glenn, and then I guess maybe, well, let's go ahead and have them talk, and then I've got some thoughts to share as well.
You have a
John,
second?
go ahead.
You have a second?
Do we need a second while we're doing discussions?
You need a second to discuss it, because if it doesn't get a second, it dies for lack of a second.
Thank you. Thank you. I couldn't remember how that worked. All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Lisa Stelter.
All right. Lisa has a second. Now we're opening for discussion. All right. And I think, Glenn, I still see your hand up, so go ahead.
So I just might add that depending on the discussions with Mr. Striden in the building department and further investigation of the basement, it may be approved depending on what takes place, and he may not need to go to the BBA. Just a suggestion on your motion, I guess. So that's my thoughts. If we work it out, of course.
Okay. John?
What Glenn said was my thing. What if we work through this process and we come up with a solution that's acceptable to the building department, then we don't need to go to the Board of Appeal, the Building Board of Appeals. Do you understand what I think?
Yep.
I think that's what Glenn said. So
I think we'll probably modify the language. We'll keep talking and then.
Yeah, it sounds like I went one step further than I needed to go.
Okay.
So should be addressed building department instead of Building Board of Appeals would be my suggestion to alter before I make another motion.
Or is it even necessary to have that sentence at all?
Well, you might want to protect yourself. You could say Building Board of Appeals or building official, and whichever one who grants that relief could grant it. That way they could get it from Glenn, or they could seek it from the Building Board of Appeals. That might be a way to protect your vote about doing this for not habitable space.
Because the building official would oversee anything through the permitting process under their authority.
And I don't want to belabor this, but honestly, it probably should just refer to based on the building review process and the issuance and approval of a building permit. That way it can go either way. If it does not need approval, it can go, if the applicant wants to apply for another variance, it would be through a different board, but if It's all just stipulations of what happens in the building permit process. That's it.
Okay, so it's with the staircase issue to be addressed through the building permit process, period?
Well, let me say this. You guys are the board. It's up to you to put forward your motions. You can't be swayed. You can take advice from us, by me, by Alicia, by Glenn, by Brandon, by Mike. It's up to you to come up with the language and create the record. If Angie, my apologies, maybe Ms. Rasmussen wants to do, whoever made the motion. Right now, there's a motion on the floor that's been seconded that you'll need to vote on unless you amend it to something different. And the movement amends it, and whoever seconded it accepts it as a friendly amendment, then you can vote on what someone on this board amends it to.
Okay, I move to amend my original motion. Can I say that?
Well, Angie, but before you do, sorry,
Yeah.
and I know everybody wants to get off. Is there a building permit? Is this numbered? Is there something we can definitively refer to so it will be clear which building permit we're talking about?
Absolutely. It is building permit BLDG, and that is 21 dash, just a second here.
1121.
1121, correct.
Okay, so I'm going to start over. I'm going to move to change my stipulation to include the building permit number BLBG 21-1121.
Right.
Does anyone second that?
I think Lisa has to.
I think I have to do
accept
that.
it as a friendly amendment.
Oh,
Do I say I second it with a friendly amendment?
I think so.
Okay. Oh, you want me to say it again? I second it with a friendly amendment, as a friendly amendment.
I have a question. So it says the basement is to be used as storage only and not habitable space. Is that a binding appeal? Again, if the building permit process approves it as habitable space, does this somehow influence that? Or, would that, what I mean? I want to make sure that everything is consistent. That's kind of the challenge with it going through this parallel process.
Because it is in the permitting process, at this point, it can only be used as non-habitable space because it's not been approved as habitable space. Because it is in the permitting process. So yes, it is somewhat binding that because it's a permit, it cannot currently be used as habitable space. But the home can be approved for renting as long as that area is not used as habitable space because it is currently in the permitting process.
So
in which case,
should we just strike that whole part, or does it does the amendment read the basement the question of the basement habitable space shall be decided through the building permit process?
And I think John was suggesting we do include some type of language like that, an acknowledgement that this is going through a process. So this doesn't necessarily set a precedent for occupiable space.
Minutes will also mention it.
True.
Sorry, I'm getting a little punchy this long in the meeting.
Yeah, I'm going to end up circling back and watching the video on this.
See, Deborah, we did this with a different board last week when we had to circle it back. And it's a different board, but one of the things we're going to want is for the stipulation, whatever it is, to be read back so that these people and Mr.
know exactly what we're dealing with.
John is 100%, whether it's something like the basement shall be used for a storage unit only unless otherwise determined by the building official or building department or building board of officials or whatever your stipulation is, whatever it is that you folks come up with. Deborah's going to read it back and you all are going to know what it is. so that I don't have to spend hours listening to tape again like I did last week to find out what exactly people said and when. So I learned last week the hard way. We're gonna know what we're voting on in a couple minutes. Hang in there, Alicia.
All right.
So let's have the friendly amendment.
Oh my goodness. I hate it when meetings do this. Okay, so do we need to vote and let that motion die to put forward a new motion? Is that kind of the cleanest way to do this?
No, both the movement and the second, whoever seconded it could both withdraw it, and there could be a fresh motion made if somebody wants to do that.
Fair enough. Angie and Lisa, would you like to take another stab, or would you like a fresh motion and withdraw this current one?
Angie, I'm going to let you speak first. Angie?
Sorry. I want to make sure that I would like to withdraw the motion and take a fresh stab at this, but I want, before I put it together or say it out loud, I want to make sure I'm understanding what other board members are asking me to say. So we're granting variance for the stairway, right? For use of stairs to basement as storage only. Am I saying this correctly, or am I adding too much?
Adding too much.
Okay.
The best thing to do is always read what the staff has in front of you, unless you have a good reason for deviating from the language.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just trying to get the language together before I put the proposed motion in place. So I'm trying to get the stipulation variance language in here, if that's helpful.
Can I ask a question before you go on?
I would love that.
Isn't the status quo allowing them to use the basement for storage already?
Correct. It's my understanding that right now the basement is not considered habitable space.
Right. So if he were to withdraw his variance appeal, the tenants could use the basement for storage. He could go through the building process, come up with some better solution for these stairs. And then if he needed a variance later from us, he could get it at that point. And he could save his $500 for now, use it again later when he needs it.
That makes more sense to me too, Tim. I agree. I'm withdrawing my original granting of the motion.
That's just my opinion. That's what I would want to do.
I'm not sure that that's correct, because if we grant the variance, then he's done.
Well, but the ultimate goal is to use it as habitable space sometime in the future, not now. I mean, unless we were to grant an unrestricted variance.
Right. I think that's what we're trying to determine, is how, if there's a stipulation in what it is.
Well, that's, I guess I'm confused. I thought, so if we do nothing, or if John withdraws his request for the variance, he can rent to the couple. He just can't, they can't use the basement as habitable space with or without a vote. Is that correct? Staff, I'm asking, I'm sorry.
Is that right, Leisha?
Can you ask that question again?
So we do nothing. Let's say we don't grant anything. Can John still rent to the tenants with the understanding that the basement can be used for storage only without us doing anything?
That is correct. And that is, I think, also going to answer the question that tenant had in the chat. If the building permit is approved as submitted and is granted approval and inspection and final, the basement can be deemed habitable space. But right now, as it stands, it was cited as a violation it went through a permitting process because it was work done without permits. So it's going through a permitting process. And then, so at this point, the rest of the house is good. It just that the basement is in question of how it can be used. It cannot be used currently as habitable space. That's where we're at right now.
So the tenants can move in regardless.
Well, I'm sorry. Can I ask, do the tenants want to rent it if they can't use the basement?
Yes, we do.
Yes, you do. Okay.
Folks, don't forget on page 1, this is a fire escape, a fire exit issue, as well as habitable basement. Look at 8404 4B2 in your code. It's a required exit. So there's also, it's a little bit more than that, you know, a habitable basement. I don't know if Glenn, you want to weigh in on that, but
I guess this is Kristin. So I don't feel comfortable making a decision because right now we're looking at a change of use of habitable and non-habitable space. And I think Glenn has already provided information to the board that there's kind of it's looked at a bit differently in terms of how often you're going up and down the stairs, right? Like storage versus habitable space. And I guess I'd like a final decision by the building department on whether this is habitable space or not, prior to us making a final decision on the stairway. It sounds like, practically speaking, us tabling this does not impact the renters. And while I fully can appreciate the challenges of trying to find rental housing and the time constraints that they've already expressed and that they're under, you know, once you provide a variance, that's it. There's not, like, that's for the lifetime of that house. And likely beyond the renter or, you know, Mr. Stride's ownership of that home. So I do want to make sure that we're giving that proper due diligence. While I at this point agree about the practical difficulties or undue hardship, I do think that we may want to look at stipulations differently if it's habitable or not habitable space as we move forward. That's my 2 cents. And John, I see your hand up, so you've been very patient. What else do you have to say?
First of all, I am so sorry that this is going like this. I don't even know how you all can keep track now because my head is spinning. So here's, I think I have this right according to Ms. Turner Tolbert, that we can rent the upstairs we can rent the entire home to Caitlin and John. They can only use the basement as storage space, and I don't need to do anything with the appeal with this appeal at this time. And the stair issue will get picked up by the building department, and with the building department, we either figure out a way to make the stairs compliant, or that basement just stays storage space or uninhabitable space. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. So as long as I can still rent to the renters, if John and Caitlin still would like to rent, they use the basement as uninhabitable space, I will withdraw this. I'm sorry. It's like, this is a process all new to me, and clearly some of this is new to you all too. And then we'll figure it out through the building department.
That is correct. And we do apologize as well. I think what muddied the waters is the permit being submitted after the appeal was submitted. So,
I will tell you, the builder that is, because this is a rental property, I can't, as an owner, do a permit, which you're clearly aware of. And so trying to find a builder that would take on this task was not very easy. And there are some other circumstances with him personally, health-wise, that drug this out. And so that's how, when I talked to this man in March, we're wrapping it up. well, not wrapping it up, submitting it in June. So as long as the house can be rented, then I'm good with that. And I can talk with Caitlin and John to figure out the wordage or just to make sure it's clear to them that that's uninhabitable space. And then the building department does what they need to do to make this house compliant. I'm fine with that. I'll if that is accurate, I will withdraw my request.
You are accurate. That's
Okay.
correct.
All right. And Glenn, I think you still were going to call me or get a hold of me tomorrow.
I would be more than happy to talk with you further tomorrow, and we'll try to figure something out to get you.
That would be great, because we want this house to be compliant.
Yes, and that's our concerns. It's a safety issue, and appreciate your comments. We'll see what we can do and come up with some suggestions if there are some that you can make it work somehow. So I will get in contact with you tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I think I've withdrawn my appeal, and I can still rent this house, and the building department is going to function through to help figure out how to make it compliant for habitable space. If that's it, I am totally good. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for going through this process with us.
Oh, yeah. I hope I never have to see you in this capacity again.
No offense taken.
Yes.
I understand completely.
Yep. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Deborah, thank
All
you
right.
for all your help.
Of
So
course.
we're still on our agenda. Item G2 has been withdrawn, so the board does not need to make a motion for that, which leaves my last and most favorite item, which is adjournment.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
I'm going to go ahead and second that.
That was the quickest
Favor,
answer.
aye. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
See you next